Hello, and welcome. My name is Mickey Spear. I am a musician, author, talk show host of tonight's show, The Healing Half. Tonight is a very special episode. It's a very personal episode where me and my amazing mother-in-law are going to talk about our March 15th weeks. And it is absolutely crazy. So before I kind of get into Angelversaries, the emotions and chaos that comes with them, I just wanted to introduce myself really quickly, just in case we haven't met before. And as always, whether you are watching live or as a replay, please give me a hello. Give Tammy a hello. Let us know that you watched it. We are so happy and so honored that you guys are here. So I just want to, I can see you a little bit. So I just know each and every one of you means so much to me for being here. So thank you for joining me on this quick little half-hour show this week. So who is Mickey Spear? Who am I? Well, I am from Eden Prairie, Minnesota. My mom passed away when I was 13 years old. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight because yesterday was her Angelversary. And she died of cancer. And I spent all of her diagnosis plus 10 years pretty much after her diagnosis pretending I was fine. And I pushed people away who wanted to help. I truly convinced myself a strong person doesn't need help. I'm a normal kid. But of course, the only way through grief is through grief. So my life started collapsing all around, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. I was such a good student, but I was really struggling to keep up in school. And I realized it was because my unprocessed grief was rearing its ugly head, demanding attention. And I am so glad I finally gave it attention because on the other side of fear is freedom. And if I can get an amen for that, I would love to hear if you guys agree with me because I was so afraid of leaning into those emotions and being vulnerable. But once you get past that, oh my gosh, life just opens up. So I wanted to start a show where we could all come together and learn how do we address our own wounds? How do we help ourselves better, whether that's grief or other things related? But then also, how do we know how to help other people we can't necessarily relate to better as well? Because again, maybe you don't have an angelversary in your life that's really hard. That's great. That's a blessing. But you might have a friend who's coming up on one. And this hopefully will be good information for you all to have. So whether it's for yourself or for a friend, this is an amazing community. I see all of you here. It is so good to see you. So just know, I'm so grateful for you. And if you've got questions or comments, keep them coming. We love to see what you guys have to say. And Tammy and I will look at all of them much more in depth after the show. So Angelversaries. And I never heard that word before. This year actually it was a couple years ago. It was a new term for me. So an Angelversary means on the day your person passed away. So on my March 15th, 2007, my beautiful mom, who is obviously right there in the center, passed away from cancer. I could talk about it for a long time, but what I will leave you with is that, again, was in 2007. And it's obviously a day that for most of my time period after she died, I pretended it was just another day. But now I'm really grateful. I'm leaning in on these hard days that I can tell you, and I'll talk more about this in a minute. Yesterday was hard. I cried harder yesterday than I had in a long time because once you let yourself feel, it's amazing how deep that well is, right? It's amazing what we keep repressed. And I just realized I had a lot of grief to work through yesterday. So thank you once again to every single person who reached out to me, who sent me messages or even just prayed. It truly means the world. So that's my March 15th story. Let me bring on my amazing mother-in-law and let her, hi, Tammy.
Hi.
It's so good to have you here. I don't want to speak for you, so why don't you tell us about your March 15th story?
March 15th sucks. So that's my son, Brendan. Brendan was 19 when he died by suicide, March 15th, 2015. So yesterday was 6 years, and yesterday was hard. Harder than maybe even a year or two were, because the reality sets in, and COVID, we weren't able to do some of the things that we like to do on his Angelversary, which is harder. And yet, I think it was necessary for me. I'm finding that sometimes being alone in your grief and giving yourself time and space is really important. You can't hide from it for too long. But yesterday we spent the day home. We didn't really do anything except crash and burn. I cried a lot. I journaled some. I worked on your workbook. I did some of your workbook for the second or third time, and it forces you to give your grief space, and it's through working through it that you start to heal. It's never going to go away, but March 15th will forever be a hard day. It's just really hard. um, Yesterday was easier in some ways than the day before, because this year, for the first time, I was really focused on this was his last day on earth. Today was, the day before he died, so it would have been Saturday. All day I'm like, this is the last time he woke up in the morning. This was the last time he had lunch. This was the last time he had supper. This was the last time he saw a friend or talked to somebody. And that was really hard to think of all those last days. And Brendan had called me that night, the night before he died, and I was at a movie. And I didn't take his call, obviously. And when I finished the movie and I saw a missed call, no voicemail. Well, I think he did leave a voicemail, but it was just like, hey, mom, not a big thing, just calling to say hi. I thought, oh, it's like 8 o'clock now. He's going to be out and about. I'll call him tomorrow. Well, tomorrow never came. So that's hard. That's a hard one. Like, I don't ignore phone calls anymore. Like, I'll call people back as soon as I can. And so it was those kind of things that were in my head before, where other years that wasn't my focus. The focus was he's gone. I miss him and he's gone. So the day before, the 14th this year, was harder for me. No logical reason for it, but that's how it was. And I've heard stories of people that as you journey through grief, because it is a journey that will last forever, your grief changes, and sometimes your grief switches from the things you missed to the things your loved one is missing. And I think I focused on that a lot this year too. Like all the things that his friends are doing, that his brothers are doing, that he's never going to do.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Why do you think why the shift? And also, why do you think we grieve those things?
I think the shift comes with healing. I think as you start to work through your grief and face the reality of it, you start opening your heart to the other things that are wrong in the picture. And the other thing that's wrong is he's missing out on those things. He missed your wedding, 6 months after he died. He missed all of this COVID, all of this stuff that we're facing in the world today. He's not here for it. And, just simple things like we're having game night. He's not here. So I think as you maybe mature in your grief, I don't know if that's the right word, but just as you deal with it, it gets bigger. Before your focus is right here and it's just you, it's everything you. And then you start to spread it. You start thinking of other people that are affected, including the loved one that passed. And they're, no matter how old they are, whether they're 5, 19, 40, 80, they're missing things after that their family is still doing. And you start missing them for you, and you start missing them for them.
Yeah. I think you said, so first of all, I'm crying because I always cry on this show. We cry on this show. That's how it goes. It's a quick half hour. We just get to cry each week. So if you're crying in the audience, you're not alone. First of all, I'm so sorry for everything. I wish I could just take that pain away from you. But I loved what you said about your vision expands, and it's not that you don't miss them, it's that you don't focus on it as much. And I think that's probably the best way I could describe it, where it's like, it's not that I don't miss you, it's that I'm feeling more confident in that area. And now, and the tidal wave just keeps on coming. I know for me yesterday, we talked on the phone yesterday for a long time, which was such a blessing. So thank you. But I know for me, my days leading up to today, just knowing what it is, I was so frustrated. I was frustrated with the stupid diet I have to do for my health stuff. I was frustrated that we couldn't get into the couple restaurants I could go to in town for reservations. I was just angry at all these kind of things. And that's not normal for me. Usually I'm a little bit more happy-go-lucky. And then I kind of realized I'm not frustrated at the restaurant for not having reservations. Like, that's on me. I am frustrated that my mom got cancer and died, and other people didn't, who lived her exact same lifestyle. And what came up for me yesterday, like you said, when we allow ourselves to feel and actually expand our scope, that emotion of frustration might not have been a feeling I allowed myself to feel before. And I think for the first time, I allowed myself to get a little angry and to be like, you know what? This sucks. And I am not okay. I am mad, and it's not fair. And none of this is fair. And just I got kind of upset. But again, it all stemmed back to grief. And again, it was these outside things are happening. I'm getting mad. But that's not really what I'm mad about. So with that said, I kind of know you had a really beautiful post on Facebook about it. Do you mind talking about some of the emotions you have experienced either this year or other years that you feel like it's worth other people knowing that you've gone through that too?
Yeah, absolutely. The first year you're numb, you're in shock. And that first Angelversary comes and you just are sort of like, wow, this nightmare is never ending. Like, this is my life. And so it sort of passes, you're heartbroken, and that's kind of where it is. And then each year it just evolves just a little bit. So you're sad, devastatingly sad. This year I was angry for the first time. We went out to the cemetery and realized that the plant we had there was kind of bad. And so we wanted to get something new. And we went to a few stores and I wasn't finding anything. Like, nothing worked. And all of you that have dealt with grief, you know that we don't have new things. We don't get new memories. So all we can do is honor them the best we can. And some people say, well, they don't care, they're dead. I care. I care because he's going to A, be remembered, and B, when people are at that cemetery, they're going to know that the person that lays there is loved. And you show that by putting things on their grave. And we couldn't find anything. And I was getting frustrated, like you said, and angry that the stores didn't have anything and the stores were bad. And we went from one to another. And by the second store, when we were leaving, I was a sobbing mess in public at stores, and people are looking at you. And my poor husband, who grieves very differently than I do, which we can talk about, doesn't know what to do with me at that point. Like, do you want to go home? Do you want to stop? What do you want me to do? And I can't talk, because what I want can never happen, because I want this to not be my life. And at the third store, I was a mess. And I finally called my mom. Who do you call when you're sad? And this is what makes me so sad for you, Mickey, because I'm 53 years old and I still call my mommy. But I called her and I'm just like, nothing's working. Nothing looks good. The flowers, they don't have anything artificial. Everything's too small. It's too ugly. It's too whatever. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And we started talking and she's like, what about like a decorative thing? So we started walking around, my husband and I, and we found an eagle. And that's what we ended up with. And it turned out beautifully. But when I called my mom, the first thing out of my mouth was, I hate this. I hate that this is my life. I hate that I am spending today walking around stores to find something to put on my son's grave. Not a birthday thing, not something that he's going to enjoy, not something to give him, but something to decorate his grave. How did this become my life? But it is my life. I don't like it. It's not fair. It hurts. And I was so angry for the first time, really, ever through this 6-year journey, that I was truly angry that this unfairness hit me.
Yeah.
And I talked to my mom. We found the eagle. We put it out. It turned out beautifully. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. And then we sprinkled granola all over his grave because we feed the animals there, because that's what Brendan would want. But it's all about finding ways to honor him, ways to honor his life and his memory, because Brendan died by suicide, but suicide does not define him. It's not who he was. It was one day in his 19 years, one day. But for many, many people, and not just surrounding Brendan, but for so many people, that one day is all people talk about. And when people walk up and they see his stone and they see a beautiful arrangement and an angel there, he was somebody. He had personality, and he was a wonderful person, and he deserves to be recognized and remembered. And that's what the Angelversaries for me are all about, is being remembered. And so we did that on Saturday, or on Sunday. And then Monday, I posted on Facebook for everybody that wanted to please light a candle at 9:10. He died like at 1 something in the morning, but we weren't told until 9:10 p.m. So on the 15th at 9:10 is when we found out he had died. And, the word 9:10, you think, oh, you're never going to think to look at the clock. You look at the clock. Like, it's shocking to me. I woke up at his death time, sound asleep. I woke up, looked at the clock, and realized he's gone. I came out of sleep at that time. I do that quite often when it gets up to this, but it happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, like you said, we have to give ourselves grace and space. Grace and space. It all comes down to honoring ourselves too. We have to honor where we are in our grief, and grief does evolve, but it's never going to end. I have a dear friend. I actually knew her daughter, and her daughter's birthday is the day before Brendan's Angelversary. And I don't remember how long it's been, maybe 14 years. And she still hurts. Her daughter's been gone for that long, and she still hurts. Of course she still hurts. Your mom's been gone how long? 14?
Oh gosh. I was thinking about, I'm so bad at math. It's 14.
I think it's 14.
Yeah.
Again, that's it. You're going to still be grieving on those days forever. And I think people in our culture and our society need to understand that we can heal and we can live life and we can be happy. But there are days where that grief is going to be very fresh and raw. And, one of those is his anniversary, a birthday, holidays. But then there's the small things, sitting at the table having a favorite meal. He's not there, But yeah, so that's how we honored him, which was a little harder because the last few years we've done something big like Feed My Starving Children, something that he was passionate about. And that's another great way to honor, a loved one, whether it's an anniversary or a birthday, is to do things that would mean something to them and gather people. But with COVID, that wasn't an option this year. So there's a lot of things that have been challenging this year for a lot of people in grief. People haven't been able to have the funerals or the celebrations or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm glad both of us, it sounds like, had just kind of an angry week. And I'm glad that we allowed ourselves to feel anger. And because as I journaled and I was just like, I'm so mad, I'm so frustrated, this isn't fair, I eventually felt that, and this is not everyone's path, and it's okay if you didn't get there, but I feel like I had to get angry to get to acceptance. I had to get mad and I had to cry and I had to do all that thing. So I guess I would just encourage all of you guys listening, if you came for wisdom, is feel what you feel, lock yourself in your room and feel it. Like I know I'm the queen of worrying about what other people think of me, but try not to. Try to just feel. If you're angry at the store, let it out. You never, and what a great testament to you never know who you're walking around Walmart or Target is going through.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Right.
But and then also if you are a friend and you are trying to comfort somebody, I think it's really important to just know last year's gone. Who knows what this Angelversary is going to bring? But still reaching out, asking how they're doing, that stuff so helps. So I guess that's kind of my next question, Tammy. What do people do to that help you on these days that you're like, wow, this is so beneficial. Thank you for doing that. Like, or what are some guidelines around how do we help people going through Angelversaries?
I think remember, even if you don't remember, if you see a post or you see something that says, oh, wow, today is that day, show up on Facebook, show up through text, a phone call, remember, because, our greatest fear is people will forget. They'll forget our loved one. And that's a legitimate fear for people. And so just showing up, listening to them, share a story, like, ask them, like, what's one memory you really love? What's a memory that you want me to hear? What was his favorite color? What are some things we can do to help you honor him? And lighting a candle last night, and people were great. They showed up, they lit the candle, they posted the picture of the candle on Facebook, in memory of Brendan. And people did some really neat things with their candle, and that means something. They show up for me, so they're supporting me, but they're also showing me that they too remember, and he won't be forgotten. Because as the years go on, the people talk about it less. Nobody posted, none of his friends posted on Facebook this year, which, okay, that's fine. They were 19 when he died. They have to move on. I'm not angry about that, but it's sad. And so I think showing up, being there, just asking them questions about their loved one, or I'd love to see a picture. Just things that just will allow you to talk about your loved one. I think it's important for people to just show up. But I also think it's important for people to realize, I had a good friend, very dear friend, that wanted to talk yesterday, and I just couldn't. I couldn't be on the phone just chatting. It was too hard, and I was too sad. And it's hard to cry in front of people, even if they're your dearest friends. It's vulnerable and it's scary, and I didn't want that. So that's something. I think the other thing to remember is everyone grieves very differently.
Yeah.
And so what I need from people may be very different from what you need from people. And I know it's different from what my husband needs.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk a little bit more about, because obviously when Angelversaries, sometimes it's a one-on-one relationship and it's just you and your house. And like, for example, like if I lost a friend of mine, I'm not living with her parents, but I still feel it. But Sean wouldn't be witnessing that. However, other times it's a group is mourning a person. Yeah. So what happens when you and other people in your household have very different needs on an Angelversary?
It comes, I'm going to say it again, grace and space, being conscious of how people grieve differently, accepting of how people grieve differently, and trying to come to terms with it's okay for it to be different. Mark doesn't have to grieve the same way I do. I'm more emotional. I'm more publicly emotional. Outwardly emotional. He is much more cognitive in it, where he's looking for answers to questions like, why are you crying? This is the 6th year. Like, yes, I know you're sad, but why today is it so much harder than yesterday? He's much more internal. He will do heavy sighs. He'll do a heavy sigh, just like the weight of the world. Just, oh gosh. And he doesn't want to necessarily talk about it. Like, I want to talk about it. I want to share. I want the expression. And he just needs to sort of let it ruminate in his head. He needs to just internally get where he needs to be. And I can't do that. It needs to come out in tears. It needs to come out in journaling. I listen to music. I will listen to music to make me cry, just to get it out. And he totally thinks that's crazy. So for him, it's
That's
more.
not crazy. That's my job. That's what I do.
Well, me too. But I think for him, it's just sitting with it and
Yeah.
processing it internally. And it comes more from the cognitive side of things, the instrumental side, where I'm much more intuitive and emotional. Um,
Mm,
and I think it's really important for families to realize that just because this person isn't talking about it all the time doesn't mean they don't care, doesn't mean they're not hurting. It just means they grieve differently than what you do or what you think they should be doing. And that's a big
yeah.
one. Like, you should be crying. This is a horrible day. Why aren't you crying? Because that's not in their makeup, you
Mm,
know? And we've had conversations about that with Sean. It's like, talk to me about this. No, that's not in his makeup right now. Hopefully one day he'll open up.
yeah.
But I think we have to be really understanding and gentle with everyone, because we can have very similar experiences, but our journeys are very unique to us. And so when you're
Mm,
in a group setting, we lost a son. Sean and Logan lost a brother. My parents lost a grandson. You lost a brother-in-law. Um, Speaking specifically of Brendan, all those relationships are very unique to that person.
yeah.
And we have to be understanding and gentle on how we let them grieve, and realize
Mm,
that each relationship deserves that respect and
yeah.
supporting
So
that.
for a friend who wants to help out, because I'm aware not everybody on the call has an angelversary that kind of cuts to the core like this one. Um, what's like the best way for them to approach somebody like a Mark or like a you, to be able to find out your style? Like what would be like the right way to, because like we talked before the camera started rolling about when people like assume you want to spend time with them. Sometimes it's really awkward and you have to be like, actually, I'd rather not hang out with you today. It's nothing
Right.
personal. It's just so
Mhm.
how do people find out styles in an appropriate way and also keep coming back? Like I'm thinking of myself who was Miss
Mhm.
Denial for 10 years, but like keep coming back in a way that's instead of saying, oh, she said she was fine, therefore I'm not going to
I'm done. I don't
touch
have
her
to ask that
again.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's asking them. I think it's like, I know today is a hard day for you. Is there anything you want to talk about, or is there anything you that I could do for you? Because maybe they want to talk about it, but then maybe they don't. Maybe
Mm,
they'd rather talk about the Minnesota Gophers coach being fired and not spend time dealing with the actual grief, but that's how they work through it, is talking about something
right.
else. So I think asking them and then paying attention to the answer. Don't just ask the question and sort of get the zombie look in your eye and ignore the answer, because they maybe don't want to talk about it right now, but maybe later you ask again. Like, oh, I know you said you didn't want to talk about it, but I'd love to share a memory I have,
Yeah.
you know, and then pay attention to the cues. Are they engaged in it, or are they like, yeah, I really don't want to hear this? Okay, then you can kind of cut it short and wait. And maybe you ask, weeks from now or months from now. But I do think asking and just paying attention. But sometimes for people, it's very subtle things. So maybe it's like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Like, let's go shoot some hoops, or let's take the dogs for a walk. And then as you're walking, maybe you ask like a simple, like, I remember when so and so did this. Or I remember the time we took the dogs for a walk and Brendan fell in the pond. Something that's not really asking anything of you, but it's
Yeah.
putting it out there, so that if in like 5 minutes he's like, yeah, I remember that. That was pretty awesome. And then they may open up to share a little
Mm,
bit more. Um, but then, sometimes it's just, I need to be with someone, but I don't want to talk about it per se. Just be there.
yeah.
But also pay attention to the cues where this person really does just want to be alone. And it's okay to be alone.
Yeah.
Like, you have those people, like, you got to keep busy. You got to keep busy. You can't focus on it. No, they actually need to focus on it. Grief waits on welcome. So
Mm,
if we don't welcome the grief in, the grief doesn't have anywhere to go.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful, Tammy. And I know we are like right up to our time here.
yeah.
And again, the title of the show was Emotions and Chaos. And I think that all came through. It's a mess. It's a hurricane. There are no rules. It's all. So for those of you who are watching and you're like, I'm worried I said the wrong thing, remember, it's always better to say something than to say nothing. Don't worry so much about saying the right thing, but I do hope we were able to shed some light and some wisdom so that way you feel more confident as you approach your friends and your loved ones. And take it from someone who pushed people away for like 10 years. It's okay to come back and say, hey, I know last year, you didn't really want to talk about it, but I've got a quick memory to share with you. Even at my most stubborn, I still appreciated hand cards and stuff that I didn't have to witness with my face so I could read it on my own time. I always appreciated that. I might not have said it. I might not have showed it. That's why we're here. So that's kind of like my last close. So Tammy, what's kind of like your last words of wisdom before we kind of wrap up for today?
You know, I didn't cry today, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, she's doing great." I am right now. I am doing great right now. That might not be the case later. So just understanding that grief is an evolving door. It's an evolving door, and there's a poem on Facebook and Google. You can Google it, "The Stone in My Pocket." And if you haven't seen the poem "A Stone in My Pocket," look it up because it is amazing and it's a great description of grief. When you first find a rock, a lot of times it's very jagged and it cuts really deep. If you have it in your pocket, it'll rub and it hurts. But if you rub it enough or it stays in your pocket long enough, it gets worn and it doesn't cut anymore, but you know it's there. You always know it's there. And that's kind of how grief is.
Yeah.
It can be real jagged and cut for a long time, and then it's just always there. But it doesn't cut you anymore. It doesn't have that same devastating effect on most days. Not to say you can't go back to those days, but that is just to always know grief is an evolving door. It's always there, and be patient and tolerant because the anger and different emotions do come up.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I love you dearly. It was so great to have you.
For everybody here.
Yeah. Everybody say goodbye to Tammy. I did put in the comment section her email address, which she is so kind, so kind to be able to share. She runs a ton of grief groups and she has a ton of connections in this world. So if you are interested, reach out to Tammy. Just say, hey, I really liked your show. But that email, wherever that is for you on your device, is in the comments. And the last little resource, in addition to Tammy's email, I wanted to say was please don't forget about My Heart Still Remembers. This book, I love it so much, and I hope it blesses you as much as it blesses me. I posted about legacy recently, and I had this just inverted triangle that we talked about on 2 weeks ago's show. It's all connected. It's all great. And I just know that it's a lot to try and tap into that emotion when perhaps your gut reaction's more like me, and it's just easier to keep busy. So if you finally are able to block off an hour, and you're like, okay, I've got an hour. The kids are busy. My husband's busy. I've got this time. Sometimes that's a daunting hour. You don't know where to start. So for me, that's where My Heart Still Remembers comes in. Get your copy, give it to a friend. It's really great for unprocessed grief. If somebody just lost somebody, maybe they'll use it right away. But I would encourage them to just sit on it for a couple of months and say, you know what, when you're having a hard day, pull this out. When you need to process, pull this out. When an Angelversary or an anniversary or a birthday, pull this out. And as always, if you haven't gotten your free candle lighting ceremony or your brain peace packet, head to my website, mickyspear.com, and make sure that you grab yours because I want you on my email list. I have my current song, Light a Candle for Me, out. So again, another resource for you if you are interested in processing and leaning in. That packet will step by step walk you through a candle lighting ceremony for free. My simple thank you for being here. But then lastly, I don't know if you guys saw in my email this week, I try to keep it to the bare minimums of what's needed, but you know me, I'm a talker, so the emails end up being a little long. If you were able to make it to the end of the email this week, you saw that I have a new song coming out called Cold Dark Room. My last two songs, See Me and Light a Candle for Me, are from the perspective of someone who died. This one's from the perspective of a friend comforting a friend. So that's going to be coming out in about a month. Hopefully a little less than that. I am so excited, and I can't wait to share with you every single step of the way. So that's my big news, is I'm releasing another song. Praise God. So thank you all so much for being here. Again, I am grateful for each and every one of you. Hit that share button if you found it valuable, and feel free to send it privately in a message to a friend. Those usually get a little bit more views. If you say, hey, I saw this episode, was thinking of you, you might like Mickey, you might like Tammy, check it out. That usually goes a little bit further than sharing to your page, which please keep sharing however you feel. Just know if you're thinking of a specific person, just send it to that specific person. As always, I love you guys so much. I am so grateful for all of you, and I will see you next week.